Pro-democracy protesters in China faced a brutal and deadly crackdown 30 years ago today in Tiananmen Square. Thousands took part in a candlelight vigil in Hong Kong to honor the unknown number of victims of the massacre that unfolded in the streets of Beijing. But as Eric Sorensen reports, that's about the only place in China where the legacy of Tiananmen Square is being recognized.
In Tiananmen Square, the effort not to remember what happened is betrayed by the obvious heavy security. For Chinese authorities, better this than the images of 30 years ago. A massive peaceful student protest for democratic reform was brutally crushed by the Chinese military. Up to several thousand people may have been killed. Wu Kai-si was a student leader then.
We lost. And the Western world adopted this China policy. They call it engagement. I just call it appeasement.
He says China would open up economically in exchange for submission politically. The UN received reports of people being detained or threatened ahead of this anniversary.
We are calling on them to implement measures to enhance the freedom of peaceful assembly and expression in China.
That is not happening right now in China, according to Human Rights Watch. Its scathing recent report details government repression and arbitrary detention in Xinjiang, home to millions of Uyghurs and other ethnic groups. In Tibet, it reports on restrictions on religious freedom and speech. In Hong Kong, limits on expression and political participation. And authorities in Beijing, it says, have cracked down on human rights advocates and detained some journalists. And, says Human Rights Watch, China has created a great firewall to filter and to censor the internet.
Critics say sophisticated surveillance and censorship is inescapable today in China.
Google is not allowed to be in China. Wikipedia recently has been banned.
Cheuk Kwan was among the marchers in Hong Kong in 1989. He says Chinese education has all but expunged the official memory of the Tiananmen massacre.
You have a general amnesia over the last 30 years. The Communist Party is hoping to wipe out the entire memory of what happened.
Xi Jinping is being called the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao Zedong, even ending term limits to his presidency.
It's a very dictatorial regime now. It's just deep, deep sadness that 30 years on, we're going backwards rather than forwards.
In Hong Kong, the Tiananmen anniversary is being remembered openly. Hong Kong still has a level of autonomy in China, but the question among worried activists is, for how much longer? Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.